Picture one night, 40,000 years ago, no roof, no fire, just you, naked by modern standards, and a wind that's been blowing across 1,000 miles of ice with nothing to stop it. You wouldn't make it to morning, and yet here you are, reading this, alive, descended from people who walked through nights exactly like that one. Not once, for 200,000 winters in a row, every ancestor in that chain beat the cold long enough to have you. Miss it once and the chain ends. It never did. Sit with that for a second. So here's the real question. Not, was the Ice Age cold? Obviously it was. The real question is this. How does a sweaty, hairless, heat-loving African primate end up the last one standing, while woolly mammoths, built for this exact weather, went extinct? Let's set the stakes first. The worst stretch hit between 26,000 and 19,000 years ago. Ice sheets a mile thick buried what's now Canada, Scandinavia, Siberia. The land that wasn't under ice was flat, open, treeless, nothing to break the wind for hundreds of miles. This wasn't bring a jacket cold, this was skin dies in minutes cold. And humans had nothing built in for it. No fur, no blubber, no ability to drop our heartbeat and sleep through it like a bear. Strip a person naked out there and the clock isn't days, it's hours. We were one of the worst equipped large mammals on that entire landscape. And we're the ones still here. So what happened between naked ape and still here 40,000 years later? Not one trick, a stack of them, each one solving a problem that should have killed us. Step 1. Never let the fire go out. Fire wasn't new by then. Humans had been keeping it for 300,000 plus years already. What changed was how seriously they treated it. Dig sites in Ukraine have turned up Ice Age hearths hot enough to hit over 600 degrees Celsius. Hotter than your oven at home. Wood was the main fuel even at the height of the cold, but some hearths show signs people may have supplemented it with bone and fat when timber ran low. Fire wasn't a comfort item, it was the whole operation. Heat, cooked food, hardened tools, extra hours of light during months when the sun barely showed up. Step 2. Stop borrowing heat, start stealing it. Fire has one flaw, it doesn't move with you, so humans solved that the only way they could, by wearing other animals' insulation. Cut marks on 300,000-year-old bear paw bones, found in cold parts of northern Europe, show people skinning bears specifically for the pelt. The exact cuts you'd make to pull a hide off clean. A draped hide is better than nothing, but it still leaks heat through every gap, every time you move. The real breakthrough is almost insultingly small. A sewing needle, bone or ivory, a hole barely visible. Dated to roughly 30,000 years ago. One researcher called it one of the most important inventions our species ever made. The logic holds up. A needle turns animal skin draped over your shoulders into tailored, sealed, layered clothing. Clothing that traps heat instead of leaking it. Some researchers think early Homo sapiens simply had better fitted winter clothes than Neanderthals did, a tailoring edge that may have mattered more than any physical adaptation. Then come the small fixes nobody talks about. Tallow, rendered fat, rubbed onto exposed skin to block wind and seal in warmth. And for the glare bouncing off endless snow, strips of bone or wood with narrow slits carved into them, tied across the eyes. Prehistoric snow goggles. Solving a threat most people don't even know existed. Snow blindness. Step 3. Build a house out of the animal that just tried to kill you. Forget the caveman in a cave image. On the open steppes of Ukraine and Russia, there were no caves, barely any trees either. So people built with the one material lying around everywhere, mammoth skeletons. At a site called Mazirek, archaeologists found round dwellings built almost entirely from mammoth bone, skulls and leg bones as the foundation, ribs and tusks curved upward as a frame, all of it sunk into the ground, packed with hide, moss, and earth for insulation. One of these structures is roughly 18,000 years old, built during the harshest stretch of the entire Ice Age, used again and again across generations. The engineering inside gets skipped over too often. Entryways were often dug lower than the sleeping area, on purpose. Cold air is dense, it pulls low and stays near the door. Warm air rises to where people actually slept. That's thermal convection, applied correctly, tens of thousands of years before anyone had a word for it. They even use snow as insulation. Packed thick around a shelter, snow can hold the inside near freezing even while the outside air sits 30 plus degrees below that. Long before the igloo as we picture it, people already knew the space under snow beats the open air above it. Step 4. Outlast the famine before it starts. Cold kills fast, hunger kills slow, and for months at a time there simply wasn't fresh food to find, so food got banked, not just eaten. A big kill triggered a whole preservation operation. Meat dried into something like jerky, smoked, frozen by the cold itself, buried in storage pits, or, stranger than it sounds, weighted down and sunk into cold ponds. A refrigerator made of water and physics. Nothing here needed power. Nothing could fail in a storm, and almost nothing from a kill went to waste. The hunting itself was coordinated, not improvised. At a site in eastern France near a limestone outcrop, hunters used fire and group tactics to drive entire herds of horses and reindeer into a natural bottleneck. Same spot, repeated for tens of thousands of years. That's a multi-generational strategy, not a lucky ambush. And here's the most underrated point in the whole story. These people were never caught off guard by winter. Their whole year was built around it. We're the ones who get surprised by a bad storm and act shocked the power went out. They built their entire calendar assuming winter would try to kill them. Because it would. Step 5. Don't sleep alone. More people lived in less space than we'd ever tolerate today. That was a choice, not a lack of options. Body heat, multiplied across a packed shelter, is a real heat source. Historically, the people sleeping alone, especially the elderly, were the most likely to die in a hard cold snap, simply because no one was beside them to share warmth with. This same logic shows up centuries later in medieval European farmhouses. Livestock were sometimes kept on the ground floor on purpose, so their body heat would rise and warm the family living above. You were, quite literally, heated by a cow acting as a furnace. It wasn't all cooperation either. Worth being honest here. Resources sometimes ran out completely, and the archaeological record includes evidence of cannibalism among some ancient human groups during periods of extreme scarcity. Survival wasn't always a clean story. Step 6, where the science gets genuinely strange. At the southern tip of South America, the Yagam people lived through brutal cold wearing almost no clothing at all. They managed it because their bodies ran metabolically hotter than average. More internal heat generated, paired with a deep squatting rest position that minimized exposed skin. Their adaptation wasn't technology, it was biology, tuned to the environment. Then there's the theory that still divides researchers. Hibernation. At Cima de los Huesos, the pit of bones, in Spain, bones from human ancestors roughly 430,000 years old show cyclical damage, seasonal growth interruptions, signs of chronic vitamin deficiency, patterns that closely resemble what shows up in animals that hibernate, where metabolism crashes and the body starts consuming itself for fuel. Some researchers think these early humans may have dropped into a deep hibernation-like state to survive winters with no fat left to burn. It's genuinely contested. Plenty of scientists blame the bone damage on other causes, but it's taken seriously enough that the debate is still going. Here's the actual punchline. Every piece of this, fire, needles, mammoth bone houses, food banking, communal sleeping, possibly even biological hibernation, existed for one reason. Failure meant death. Full stop, every single winter, for hundreds of thousands of years in a row. And then, in a sliver of time that's basically nothing on this scale, we went from packing mammoth ribs with moss to keep a family alive, to complaining about the 3 seconds it takes a car to warm up. We didn't just survive winter, we made it boring. It's worth remembering once in a while just how unlikely that actually was.